Alright, hello everyone, thanks for joining me today. So if you've been watching the news even a little bit, many of you may have been seeing and hearing about this so-called jack-in-a-box effect that's been happening to Russian tanks in Ukraine. Many in the media are shocked by these violent explosions that result in turrets being blown off the hull of T-72s and T-80s and T-90s. Now this is nothing new if you play Russian tanks and War Thunder. But what many are starting to understand is that the ammunition carousel design is fatally flawed. But the question is, why does Russia keep building tanks this way? Now obviously, when hit in the ammo, any tank will explode in a spectacular fashion. But the Russian ammunition carousel design for the tank's autoloader makes any penetrating hit to the ammo super deadly, catastrophic. This isn't the first time this design flaw has resulted in lots of Russian tanks being lost. This also happened in Desert Storm and in Chechnya. In Desert Storm, many elite Iraqi Republican Guard T-72s were hit and they also had their turrets blown off. In Chechnya, the scene was very similar to what we're seeing now in Ukraine. Now, the differences between Russian and Western tank design philosophy is what probably drew many of us to War Thunder in the first place. But none of us has to pay any real cost when our tanks are destroyed because this is just a video game. Having said that, is it time for Russia to abandon the ammunition carousel design? Just from recent observations, it seems costly in both equipment and crews. For the most part, Western tank designers learned the hard way that storing ammunition in the crew compartment without any protection is not a good idea. The US witnessed firsthand M60s being catastrophically destroyed in the Arab-Israeli wars in the 1970s and designed the M1 Abrams to feature a large ammunition compartment with blowout panels that protect the crew if the ammunition was hit. With the ammunition exploding upwards and outwards, the jack-in-a-box effect on US tanks and Western MBTs is avoided, and the crew survives to fight another day. Starting in World War II and lasting pretty much up to this day, Russia has subscribed to the quantity over quality philosophy with regards to tank design. They had overwhelming numbers in Central Europe in the Cold War era, and when teamed with Warsaw Pact formations, they had a 3-to-1 numerical advantage over NATO MBTs. NATO had around 10,000 main battle tanks, with the Warsaw Pact and Russia having a total of around 30,000 main battle tanks. Russian tanks then and now are relatively cheap compared to NATO MBTs. For example, a T-72 right now costs between $1 and $2 million, while an M1 Abrams is roughly $6 to $8 million. Back in the days of the Cold War, for the most part, NATO nations built their tanks with crew survivability in mind and with state-of-the-art technology because they knew they would be outnumbered. Remember that the revolutionary Leopard 2 entered service for the Bundeswehr in 1979, replacing the thin-skinned Leopard 1s as the main MBT for Germany. M1s and Challenger 1s also started arriving in the early 80s in West Germany as well. For the most part, the main fight was going to be in Central Europe, and NATO had a trio of well-armed and armored MBTs to face off against Russia and the Warsaw Pact. Obviously, we're a long way away from the 80s and that World War III scenario, and Russia doesn't have those kind of numbers anymore for main battle tanks. In 1989, the height of their power, Russia had approximately 18,000 tanks alone, and a further 11,000 belonging to Warsaw Pact nations. Today, Russia has something more like 2,800 to 3,000 active tanks, with another 10,000 or so in storage. But the point is, with so few active tanks, I don't think Russia can afford to play the quantity over quality game anymore with regard to tank design. But that seems to not be getting through. Russian tank designers seem not to be able to learn any lessons, even though the T-14 Armata has an unmanned turret. It's rumored to still use an ammunition loading and storage architecture similar to the legacy T-72s and T-80 tank designs. Although according to this cutaway I have right here, the crew is sitting in an armored capsule, so they should have some protection, but I still don't see any blowout panels. With this design, it looks like, as the others before it, if the tank gets hit in the ammunition, the turret is coming off, even in the Armata. But take this with a grain of salt, as much of the design of the Armada is still classified. Currently, the Armada tank hasn't been fielded in any significant numbers due to costs, which is reportedly around $4 million a copy. At this point, Russia seems to be all in on their own tank design philosophy, which is cheap, lightweight, fast, low silhouette, even though the Armada is a little bit taller. They're well armed, but they are always lacking in crew protection features. In my opinion, for this formula to work going forward, you need vast numbers of tanks, and Russia just doesn't have that anymore. But what do you all think? Is it time for Russia to change their tank design philosophy? Do you think the ammunition carousel is a fine design, or do you think it's fatally flawed like I think? Also, sorry about the voice. A little bit, been a little bit sick, so it might sound a little bit stuffy, and I've been a little slow in the videos because I've actually been moving. But as always, thanks for checking out the video. I'll try to make another one pretty soon. And always, if you like the content, hit the like button. Feel free to leave comments. I love to reply. And I'll see you guys in a future video. Thanks.